I'm Matt.
Hey, I'm Steve.
Hey, I'm John.
This is the Sober Friends Podcast. We're here for the sober curious, the new guy, and the old-timer. We're here to talk about the stuff anyone looking to live alcohol-free has to face day to day, and how we overcame those struggles. We speak for no 12-step group, but we do try to remain anonymous. You're not alone. This is the Sober Friends Podcast.
You think that you have enough time away from something and you can go back to doing it safely. That is what people talk about with alcohol, but Steve sent me a text this morning about greasy, grimy food, and hey, I haven't had that in a while. Shouldn't bother me. How'd that work out for you?
Oh, not well. Not well at all. Not that I don't have it, but something weird happened Thursday night. But it got me thinking, and so I sent you the text Thursday night. We had a family gathering. There's only of all my father's siblings and aunts and their wives or husbands. There were 18 of them at one time. There's 4 left. And one of them is in hospice. And anyway, one of them lives in Florida and was up. And we always look for a reason to get the extended family together. So she was up, my aunt was up from Florida, and we all met at a little social club, one of these Italian-American, actually it's an American-Italian club in Waterbury. And anyway, so they have food, and I've been there before. And I was hungry. I hadn't eaten a lot today, so I over-ordered a lot of greasy food.
Oh, there we go.
And I ate much of it, and what happened was I woke up with really, really bad heartburn, which is a whole nother story. I've been getting a little bit of that. It's not something that bothers me. I don't usually have that, but recently I've been getting a little bit of it. And I woke up and I was really, really distressed. I mean, I was like,
I can understand,
big time distressed. Like I was having trouble breathing, and it's one of those things where, like, it got to a point where I started thinking, is this really heartburn or is this a heart attack? Like, it was that bad. And I don't have heart issues in my family. I've been tested for other reasons, and I was pretty sure it wasn't. But I was pretty distressed. That was Thursday night, and then Friday I had a doctor's appointment. I had some errands to do with our buddy Mikey, and I picked him up, and I was told him, like, listen, Mike, I don't feel good. I didn't feel good all day Friday after this episode. I didn't sleep good well the rest of the night. And I told him, like, it's just going to be hit or miss. We'll do a few errands, and as soon as I'm done, I'm going to say I'm done, and I'm going home. So that's what we did, and they went on. But it got me thinking. When I woke up Friday, it got me thinking, like, how shitty I felt.
Yeah.
And I thought, something, if I don't eat greasy food like that again, I'm okay. Like, I enjoy it, but it's not like I feel the need to eat it, right? I mean, there were other options I could have had. And I even said, we go down to this place every once in a while, like, it's an Italian. Like, I'll do the spaghetti and meatballs next time, right? Like, that's a safer choice. And it got me thinking, well, how different is that from alcohol?
No different.
And how many days in my life did I wake up feeling shitty and hungover from a night of heavy drinking, maybe puking, like in the morning when I couldn't even eat. I couldn't put a piece of food in my stomach because I was so sick. I remember those days really like I need to eat something because my stomach is, but I don't know if I could eat anything. And I'm not talking about the end days. I'm not talking about the days where I was an absolute, total 100% alcoholic. I'm talking about the time where I led up to that. Those times where I was drinking and I thought I was drinking somewhat responsibly, somewhat just having fun. I would chalk up to that night saying, oh, I just had too much. I had too much, fun. My point is I never thought like, oh, I should probably not drink like that, right?
Yes.
I should probably not drink like that again. And I thought that the differences between those two things were it's easy for me to think I'll give up the greasy hamburgers or sausage burger and the fries and the onion rings and all that kind of stuff, especially from a less than reputable place, right? I mean, I can go to certain restaurants and probably have that stuff. But with alcohol, I never thought like that. And again, not at the end I did. I can't do this. That was a different feeling. But I'm talking about all that time leading up to it when maybe I could have stopped, right? Maybe I could have stopped my drinking before I became fully alcoholic. that never occurred to me, like that maybe I shouldn't do that. And I just thought, like, that's why I go to meetings, right? That's why I need a program. That's why I do, is because alcohol is different than anything else in my life. And I don't know, it hit me. I ended up chairing the Friday night meeting, and I told that same story, and we had a great meeting around that whole subject, is how it's different, and it's why I go to meetings. And I said, I didn't feel good Friday night. And I really thought about staying home from my meeting, but I don't do that often. I have to be really, really sick. I have to be sick enough that I think I'm going to get other people sick. Yep. If I'm just not feeling good, I go. But if I think I got something contagious, I'll stay away just to protect the other guys. And I went there, and I turned out that whoever was supposed to chair didn't show up, and I had COVID a few weeks ago, and somebody filled in for me. I'm like, hey, somebody filled in for me a few weeks ago. I'll chair tonight. So we had a great meeting on that topic, and about how alcohol and addiction is so much different than any of the other things in our life.
Yeah, it can be similar, though, too.
Yeah.
If I had to give up pizza forever, like I think about what if I'm diagnosed with celiac disease? There are some things that would be very difficult to stop. Like getting pizza and not having pizza again, I almost feel like that's as hard as giving up alcohol.
Yeah.
There's a few food items, not as many. That's a hard one. I think I have to give up peanut butter and peanuts.
Okay.
So that's why this hit me, that I think I've had some issues with gut inflammation. And I eat quite a bit of peanut butter. So most days I have oatmeal and I mix in some peanut butter, maybe brown sugar, maybe some honey, local honey. And it makes for a pretty good breakfast. I can have that before I go to the gym, and my sugar's not all over the place. I reached out to my niece, who is a nutritionist, because my wife said, maybe it's the peanuts and the peanut butter that are causing you problems. And there are times that I'll have peanuts or peanut butter that it causes bloat, and I notice a difference. And she told me, well, maybe give it up for a month and then work it back in. And I chuckled at that. I'm like, it's like, give up booze for a month and then see if you can work it back in. And to me, it's like, yeah, I think I just have to be done with the peanut butter and the peanuts. And as much as I really like peanuts and peanut butter, I'm okay giving it up. I'm okay trying something different because I see the immediate benefits. But the idea at the time of give up alcohol for a month and then work it back in, that makes me chuckle.
Yeah.
I don't think if I'm like, gosh, I'm having all these issues, well, maybe you should stop drinking. That would be like giving up a friend or a loved one or a parent.
Two things there. Yeah, one is I agree with you, right? People ask me all the time what my favorite food is, and I always tell them pizza. And you're right. If this was pizza, I may have a different view of it because I too love pizza. But I still think that I could give up pizza, and although I would probably cheat on the pizza and suffer through some of those next days because I like pizza that much, but it would be fewer and farther between. And I wouldn't treat pizza like I treated alcohol, which I still went to all the time, right? I went to back to alcohol all the time. And it might even take me, right? And I'm talking about, like I said, again, even in the worst days, right? I mean, I would have points where I would go, I can't do that anymore. And I would not drink for 1 or 2 or 3 days. But by that third day, we always talk about that third day. It seems like that is the day that many of us could get to. And then I'd be back drinking no matter how I felt or how much willpower I had or anything like that. So even pizza, as much as it is my favorite food, I would absolutely still treat it differently, and I would have to prepare, and I would have to really think about it, and I would probably eat less of it, right? I would probably go, okay, I'm going to have 2 slices or 3 slices instead of a half a pizza, which, no, really, and
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right, and maybe, change some toppings around. Like, I would do things differently. And that's not to say I didn't try a lot of these type of things with alcohol. We talk, in our big book, it tells us we tried all these different things. Like, when I realized, I'm not even sure if I realized I had a drinking problem, but like many of us, I tried different things to rein in my drinking, even before I knew it was alcohol. When, again, once I tipped the scale and I became fully blown alcoholic, all bets were off. It's like nothing mattered. I was drinking no matter what. But the time leading up to that, I played all those same games. I drank different stuff, I had some trouble. We talked about this, maybe it was Monday night. I think it was Monday night before the meeting. We talked about how, I didn't get in trouble with cops a lot and didn't have a lot of problems, but I had my share of instances where police and I, got to know each other a little bit. And what I realized early on was, it seemed like I came up with this, at least it seemed to me, when I drink whiskey, I get a little bit more aggressive, right? It seemed that. And when I drink whiskey, it seems like, cops show up. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop drinking whiskey, right? One of those type of things. And honestly, that did seem to work because I didn't seem to have behaved that way when I drank other stuff. So I tried lots of different stuff when I was drinking. But it's just so different. It is just so different. I mean, like I said, I woke up, I was so distressed. And I think my reaction, and a lot of this I'm just talking about this as we're talking about it live, but I think my reaction is what I think a typical normal person would feel after they had a bad night of drinking, right? So if a typical normal person had a night where they woke up hungover and sick, they may go, "Oh my God, I don't want to do that again," right? And they may never drink, or they may again really dial it back, or they may go months or years like, "Oh, I don't want to do that again." Like I don't like that feeling. Man, I had many nights. Like I said, I have many nights. We talked about it, like where I drank so much that I would get sick and puke all over the place, and then start drinking that same night.
Yep.
Right? Because I got rid of I got rid of all that stuff that was bothering my stomach. Now I could drink some more.
Right.
Right? And so those type of insane behaviors, which they don't go over to food as much. There is still, we talk about cross addictions, and we've talked about food on this thing. So I have some of those, but they're not like alcohol, right? They're not like alcohol. And part of that is because they're not as destructive as alcohol was for me.
My wife is one of those people that will have a bad experience with alcohol, and a bad experience means she's having trouble sleeping or wakes up with a headache the next morning or has a headache a little bit later. These would be acceptable issues for us. And she won't have a drink again for a year.
Right.
She just, to the point that I don't know the last time she's had alcohol. She just never drinks because she's not opposed to it, but then she'll go through the thought process. And if I have this, it makes me feel groggy. It gives me a headache. I don't sleep well. I feel bad the next day. I'll just have a water. Not even like some, well, she'll have like cranberry and soda water, but it's like, I'm not even going to go get something foofy. I'm just going to have a big glass of water instead. That is beyond me.
Yeah. The big book tells us we drink not because we like the taste, but because we like the effect, right? That's what the big book tells. And I know, right? I drank because I like the effect. I like what the buzz, what the alcohol gave me, which was a buzz. Not even the drunkenness, right? The buzz. And somebody like your wife, and my wife too, somewhat, that's not why they drink, right? They drink sort of a social thing.
Mm-hmm.
My wife probably a little bit more than your wife, maybe likes the little bit of glow she gets on it, but that's what she likes, the little glow that she gets after one glass of wine or maybe 2 glasses of wine. I seldomly see my wife drink more than that, and same thing with my wife. Like my wife doesn't, there was a time where she always had a bottle of or a lot of times had a bottle of wine in the fridge, and now almost never, there's almost never wine in our house anymore. And it's the same thing. She just doesn't care. She doesn't have that mental obsession, that mental, again, the big book tells us that the mind the problem with our alcohol resides in our mind rather than our body, right? It's that mind telling us, oh, we need this, or we like this buzz, or this is going to help me, or it's going to help me forget about how I'm feeling, or whatever it might be. Normal people don't have that issue, and They don't have to drink that way. But it was just really apparent to me, like I said, when I woke up and I realized, man, this is why I go to meetings. This is why I showed up at that meeting Friday night,
Right.
even when I didn't feel good, right? Even when I didn't want to go. And I really didn't want to go Friday night. And part of it is I know, like, we're going to a baseball game with the family Friday if it's nice out, so I won't be there Friday. I don't like to miss that meeting. But, I need to do that because I need to remind myself that this is what it's about. If I don't take care of my alcohol addiction, then I'm going to end up with the equivalent heartburn, which is much worse.
Right.
Down the road, because that's what happens to me.
I think it's more than that for me. Recovery and meetings is not so much about the alcohol now, because I don't feel the need to drink, but it's the other behaviors that pop up.
Right.
I'm trying to work on the other behaviors that cause issues in my life.
Right.
That left untreated lead to alcohol, but it also helps other parts of my life.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I do the same thing, but being someone who did have an issue and then went back out because of those bad behaviors, right? This is exactly what happened to me. I didn't treat those bad behaviors, and I ended up picking up my drink. And, like, I'm very much aware of that. I'm very much aware that relapse is possible, and I'm very much aware of that because the meetings I go to, the Friday night meeting, and not even that, but other meetings, I hear guys coming back all the time. And we talked about this Friday night. We talked about guys coming back after 20 and 30 years, right?
Wow.
We talked about guys who, our buddy Todd was telling a story how one of the first meetings he went to, he was sitting there and the guy said, had 32 years or something like that, and said he was coming back like he had drank the night before. And Todd was like, how does that happen? Like, how do you put together 32 years and then drink? And those are the stories that I need to hear. I do. I need to hear those stories because I need to remember that. Same thing with me. Like, even in my worst days, I don't think that alcohol is a solution. But I also know that if I don't sort of fix what's going on in those worst days, if I don't address that somehow, like either through my program or through therapy or through talking with the person who may be involved with that, if I don't do that, then I am way more susceptible to drink and have an issue and relapse. I realize that today. That's why I'm petrified of that.
Or at the least, slip back into bad behaviors.
Absolutely.
Slip back into bad patterns of thought. That's what I worry about.
Yeah. Right. And to me, bad patterns of thought and bad behaviors lead to, first of all, and I've talked about this before, is that, and again, I have a history of this, and I watched it happen in my own life. Bad behavior, bad thought processes lead me to destroy a lot of stuff that's around me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Families, relationship, all this kind of thing, monetary stuff, like just start destroying all of that before I ever pick up a drink, right? And then what happens is as I start to, in my past, as I destroy that shit, then I start feeling so bad that I need some relief, and that's where the alcohol comes back in, right? That's where, for me, like, and I get the, what the fucks, really, why, what the fuck, what's the difference whether I'm drunk or, so I need to be really careful with that so I don't do that behavior again, because that's a pattern for me, right? And I mean, it's a pattern that, that's repeated. It's a pattern that happened in my first marriage, and I did that, and it's a pattern that happened in my second marriage, and I was able to stop it before I destroyed it all, but I was on the way. I was well on my way to do it again. So for me, again, for this alcoholic, I see that pattern, and for me, it's crucial. It's absolutely crucial that I pay attention to that, and I do whatever's necessary to stop that behavior before it gets too bad. Because, I talked about it a few weeks ago when I had the meltdown, and like that crazy, I said, that person who had that meltdown a month or 2 months ago now, that person's going to drink. I mean it. Like, I know that person will drink. So that's the kind of stuff that I have to always be on guard for. The behavior, just like we're talking about, it's the behavior, because that's going to lead me to drink.
Where do you think it helps, or how does it help for you sharing this with somebody else or being helpful?
Well, I hope somebody can, if somebody's listening to this, that they could think about their own situations, right? Like, oh yeah, I've felt that way too, right? Or, oh yeah, or I have that pattern too, right? We're taught in our program to identify, not compare.
Right.
So I hope that if somebody's listening to this, they can identify with some of the things I've said or some of the things that I've gone through, which is why we tell our stories, right? Again, our big book tells us we will not regret the past, but neither will we shut the door on it, right? And what that means is that I'm going to talk about my past. I'm going to talk about the destructive things, right? Many people probably don't want to talk about that kind of stuff. We're taught to talk about that kind of stuff,
yes,
so that other people can identify with it and go, maybe somebody goes, you know something? I'm on a self-destructive behavior path right now that if I don't fix it, I'm going to lose everything that I care about, right? If one person hears this and gets that message and maybe does something about it and stops that from, playing out to the end, then me sitting here with you every Sunday morning doing this is worth it to me, right? It is. It's worth it to me if I could help save one person out there. So that's all. That's what I hope. I mean, I hope people can hear it. I hope people might say, you know something, I need to do a little bit more work, whatever it might be. And it's why, like I said, it's why I go to meetings. It's why when I got there and they didn't have a chair for my Friday night meeting, even though I felt like shit, I stepped up and said, hey, I'll chair. I'll take over it and I'll do it. Because when I didn't feel good before, somebody did it for me. The other thing I did at that Friday night meeting is we get speaking commitments for the group, and I took one of those too, right? So, I mean, I constantly do. Those are the things I do. I take commitments. I do things, and constantly do that so that I could just keep my program moving in the right direction.
I haven't done a speaking commitment in years. I'd love to do one. I just don't go to enough of the meetings that have those, but well, I will tell you, my ADHD, it feels like, is totally out of control lately, and it's very difficult for me to focus. Helping out at a meeting, chairing, helps me because it gives me something to focus on, as opposed to my own thoughts, which are just swirling around. And lately, it's like I can't control it. So having a job oftentimes is very, very helpful because I have to pay attention.
Right.
I have to use my coping strategies to make sure that I'm paying attention to what's going on. Our buddy Chris in the UK reached out, and I love when you get your emails. Sometimes I forget to mention this on the show because, again, I have ADHD and I can't focus on more than one thing at a time. But he reached out saying that he had a head full before he went to work. It was nothing serious. There were just lots of thoughts in his head. He turned on our podcast, and it helped him incredibly. Yeah, nothing major, but just something that he was feeling low for about 3 weeks, and it helped him put into action some things, and he's on the right track. So I think that's a great thing, even if it's 3 weeks, but it's just 3 weeks, and the podcast helped, and we gave some good tips, and now he's on the right track. He's been sober since early 2021. Which is awesome. So we love getting your emails. I love hearing this stuff, that this connects. It keeps us on the right path of what should we talk about, because we don't do this just to hear ourselves talk. We want to make sure that it helps you, that you're getting something out of it, even if it's minor relief, because minor relief, just taking the edge off, might be the thing that keeps you sober.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Chris. It's really good to hear that. Like you said, we do this for exactly that reason. Mm-hmm. And it really is, I know it for myself. Listen, I'm sure if Chris and I met and if Chris came to one of our meetings, we would find that he's just an alcoholic like us, right? Yeah. And that's why we do this, and that's what I always say is, like, I know that when I throw on a podcast, right, I have a bunch of different recovery podcasts that I'll pop on here and there. it's like it might be a half an hour or 45 minutes long, and I don't like go, oh yeah, that was a great 45 minutes. But usually I'll take one or two things out of it, right? And this is what we, right? And I can go, I need to think about that, or maybe I should try that, right? And that's the same thing with meetings, and I love that too, right? We all get in those funks, right? We get in those funks we're not feeling good, and for me and for this alcoholic, 90% of the time, it's going to be through my program or through the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous that I'm going to find relief, right? Mm-hmm. Other people may find it differently. If you have if you belong to a religious group or something, you may find some relief elsewhere. But for me, it's going to be through the fellowship and in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then some of the other times I'll be able to talk to my wife about some things or talk to other friends and get some relief. But that's why I do this. That's why we all do this. That's why I go to meetings. That's why I listen to other people. Mm-hmm. One of the great things about this this program is we talk about how there's a lot of people who we wouldn't mix outside of AA rooms, right? Outside of meetings. But man, can they be helpful to me within those rooms, right?
Absolutely.
They could be really helpful. When we all get in our cars and we go our different ways, God bless them, everybody has their own life. But in that room, in that situation, or in that phone call, right? All these same people who, right, in that phone call, if I needed to call them or they needed to call me, we're focused on one thing, helping each other with this problem. And listen, I'm just so grateful for that. I really am. I'm grateful for having that. I'm grateful for going through the steps. I'm grateful for knowing that these are issues for me so I could address them, right? Because for years, I went through these same issues and I didn't understand them. And again, we talk about it. It's like a broken record. But my solution to dealing with those issues was to drink.
Right.
It was to drink. That was my solution. And it just was, it led to a very destructive, sad time, like lots of really, really bad times in my life. And hasn't been like that for a long time. And if I keep doing what I need to do, keep showing up, then hopefully I can keep it from becoming that way.
If you want to be like Chris and close the loop with us, Matt at SoberFriendsPod.com, on Instagram at SoberFriendsPod, and the website, SoberFriendsPod.com. That should be easy to remember. Steve, no Sonic, no cheeseburgers today.
Yeah, no Sonic. Never been to a Sonic.
Yeah, you'll feel like crap afterwards. I have. Go to Shake Shack. You'll feel better. Yeah. All right, everybody. We will see you next week.
You made it this far into the podcast. That tells me you're a pretty big fan. If you like what we do and you find value in the podcast, consider a donation at buymeacoffee.com/SoberFriendsPod. Your donation keeps us on the air to help out the new guy and helps us defray some of our costs. If you find value in our podcast, please consider a donation at buymeacoffee.com/SoberFriendsPod.